Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's web seminar, Jumpstart Your Business, Part 2, The Business Plan. My name is Laura Haight, and I am the Managing Partner of Portfolio Communications. I will be your moderator today. We at Portfolio are very excited to be working with the SBDC to bring you this on-demand presentation of the Jumpstart series. This is the second of a three-part series of events that focus on preparing you to start a business. Part 1 addressed the question of whether you are ready, personally, professionally, and financially, to start a business. Today's presentation moves the process forward to the preparation of the business plan. Statistics show that businesses that have taken the time to develop a detailed business plan have a greater chance of surviving the critical first 3 years. Yes, it is time-consuming, but it's well worth the effort. And if you're considering financing, it's going to be required. Small Business Development Center is dedicated to helping small businesses and entrepreneurs like you to start, grow, and thrive. The more you hear about, you'll hear more about the services you as an entrepreneur have access to during the presentation. Our presenter today is Scott Welshell, Area Manager and a Business Consultant for the Greenville Area SBDC. There will be a Q&A session following the presentation. At the end of the webinar, your browser will be directed to a web page where you can download our business plan template and also find additional links to information and resources. So now on to our program with Scott Welshell taking us through a detailed session on researching and preparing a business plan. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for joining us in today's presentation. Let's jump right in and provide a little background information on who the Small Business Development Center is and how we help. In South Carolina, there are 17 area small business development centers, local offices, that provide support and assistance to the small business community from pre-launch business planning, concept development, early stage questions and support, through the life cycle of business, through growth, overcoming, supporting business owners and entrepreneurs through challenges of financing, growth, marketing, strategy issues related to human resources, and many others, through even to exit strategy and life beyond the business. These small business development centers in South Carolina are hosted by a really collaborative effort of Clemson University, the University of South Carolina State University, and Winthrop University. And here in the upstate, Clemson hosts 4 offices in Greenville, Spartanburg, Greenwood, and in Clemson. The services are made available through support from the Federal Small Business Administration and the state of South Carolina. Jumping right into the business plan, as Laura mentioned in the introduction, statistics do routinely show that businesses that take the time to develop a detailed and thoughtful business plan before they open do have a much greater chance of success long-term in operating the business and growing and surviving relative to the peers that don't take the time to establish a meaningful business plan. So in addition to the obvious increase your odds of success motivation, we provided a number of other reasons to complete a business plan. Laura also mentioned a very important one, which was that if you're considering outside financing, it's going to be required. It really isn't optional. And so when the world expects it of you and you owe it to yourself to craft a business plan that helps you address questions early in the process, that helps you to be a better manager, a better leader, a better business owner, to help you to communicate your ideas to customers and to employees, to vendors and suppliers, to help you enjoy business ownership. And believe me, it is more rewarding when you're able to lead and be in a proactive planning mode rather than constantly reacting and putting out fires. The business plan can be useful to not only just those who may be interested in investing or financing or supporting your business, but also in pulling uniform direction and wrapping your thoughts and your plans, your important ideas around the employees and other supporters of the business in a single concrete direction. And really help you address questions that you're going to be faced with eventually anyway. The business planning process, most of the time, helps you anticipate those questions, give thought to them, and find some answers before you're fully committed to the business. When you don't have time to back up or when you don't have the resources to go back and do the research. So clearly better to address those now rather than later. One of our goals in the presentation today is to give you as many tools as possible to create a useful, helpful business plan to guide you through your planning stage as well as through the management and operations stage of your business. And we begin with asking 4 important questions and provide 4 tools to help you address these questions in a way to help you produce a more meaningful plan. The first question we begin with is, why should it exist? And we touch on this in the mission statement of the business. Your reason to exist, the primary question, who cares and so what? Look into the marketplace and say, this is what I want to do because, and that is the beginning of a mission statement. The what should be done deals with a lot of the details in terms of the operations, the management, the how should it be done. It is addressed in a number of ways, primarily reflecting who the customer is, integrating the what you do and the for who you do it. And importantly, the last question to ask is to look at your research and say, what do the numbers tell me? And in every stage of the business plan, there are small pieces of research that can be completed to help you build a more meaningful, more effective plan to guide your business in the future. Some of the tools we'll address as we go through the workshop include crafting a mission and vision statement for the business, developing goals and objectives that are useful, and a tool called a SWOT analysis, which we'll touch on soon. I've never worked as a copy editor or as a technical writer, and I really don't know, at the end of the day, I've never heard a lender say that, well, it was a great plan, a good idea, I just really didn't like the font they used, and I wish they would have, spaced a little differently. While that doesn't happen, there are some basic style suggestions we'd like to make so that your plan isn't difficult to read. We try to encourage people to break up separate ideas into paragraphs to address just a small number of ideas at a time. Our human brains do have a limited capacity to maintain a train of thought beyond paragraph after paragraph. And I've seen plans that have great information just written as if 2 or 3 pages continuously without a sentence break, without a paragraph break, and it really, by the time you get to the end, you've forgotten what you began with. So we do encourage people to look for a formatting, an outline format, or a series of paragraphs that address one main idea per paragraph. And whether you left justify or use a full width of the page justification, either of those are fairly common. Center or right justify really are more difficult to read. And just one basic detail, you probably learned this in school, that if you're going to quote a source or if you're going to pull a statistic from something you've read or something you found in your research, quote it, cite it as carefully as possible, reference the author, the publisher of the report. It really goes to credibility, and it makes those details more believable, and they are much stronger in supporting your business plan arguments. At this point, we can begin to work through the general outline of the business plan, and we'll touch on, at a fairly reasonable level, the contents of each section as we go through it. The first one, however, we'll treat a little differently. The executive summary, I don't break down point by point, but I do lead off this way, saying you write it last and put it at the front. So if you begin writing your executive summary as if you're starting from a blank page and you want to hit all the highlights up front, you begin repeating yourself by the time you get into the plan. And truly a summary should be just that. It should summarize the content found elsewhere in the body of the plan. For many businesses, the executive summary may be 2 or 3 paragraphs. It may fully reflect less than half a page or about half a page, rarely more than 2 pages. So again, keep it as simple as you can in the context of the plan itself, and wait until you've written the other key elements of the plan, and then craft a summary that pulls just the main ideas from each of the other sections. Now we can move on to Roman numeral 2, the company, which begins with some basic description, telling the who, the what is the name of the company, what's the legal form, are you an LLC or a corporation, is this sole proprietorship, are you based in another state. Include a mission statement, vision statement for the business that makes sense, that are specific and clear as possible. Tell what you do and why. what services, what goods do you produce, what needs in the marketplace do your services or your products fulfill, and who do you do this for? Who is, at a very high level, the customer that you're here to serve? Do you serve homeowners in certain zip codes? Do you serve homeowners in certain income brackets? Do you serve individual consumers? Do you serve manufacturers or government organizations? The company mission and vision statement. Again, this isn't the kind of thing that I've heard lenders or others say, great plan, great people, good ideas. They just really didn't win me over with the mission statement. Well, this isn't likely to be a make or break element of the plan. It really is important that you, for the purposes of managing the business, of building a culture around the business, give some thought to why exactly you exist. Your mission statement is just that. It's the why are we here, and to address the so what question in the marketplace. It should reflect the core purpose, the direction of the company. It should be aligned with the basic values of the employees and the owners. Your mission statement shouldn't be a paragraph. It shouldn't be a page. It should typically be 1 to 2 sentences that make a good stand at identifying you in the marketplace and telling what is unique and compelling about your business. We've got a couple examples here in the text that you can review later in more detail. I think it's clear that one is a little more clear than the other. One tends to ramble. But again, the mission statement can be very subjective. There are dozens of books or articles have been written about the value of a mission statement for a business. Again, really isn't the single most important element in the plan, but should be consistent with the personality you project throughout the rest of the plan. Moving beyond the mission and vision of the business into the goals and objectives. This, again, is basic strategic planning. Goals are the forward-thinking, the long-term direction you want the business to head, the things you want to accomplish. Objectives are more short-term, things you will do in order to achieve those goals. If you begin to structure a business plan around 3 or 4 goals, you may have 2 to 3 objectives that you will carry out to achieve each of those. And these are often most clearly reflected in marketing plans and strategic marketing section of the plan, but they may come up in other sections as well. If you begin a plan with 7 or 8 or 10 goals that you're pursuing, you're probably going to find yourself writing a short book and not a business plan, which really is your objective to begin with. Here we have a quick example of a goal, a fairly long-term goal, being the most recognized brand in the industry, whatever the industry is. And then your first objective is going to be to focus on a marketing plan within a defined period of time with a specific goal of reaching a specified brand recognition within a certain timeline. The second goal speaks to a desired level of employee attendance on tardiness, reducing tardiness to below 5%. And the objective there is to create a policy or a plan or some type of action by a certain date, which will lead to an employee attendance of at least 95% on-time attendance through a bonus system for the employees. I hope those 2 examples help to clarify the relationship between the goal and 1 or more objectives that support that goal. The next section of the plan, the next piece of the company summary begins to identify the what's. What are the specific products and services? Who is the target market that you provide that product, or each product or service for? It may be that you make small machine parts for one industry and large machine parts for another industry. It may be that you provide product as well as services, but clearly identify the who that goes with each what that you offer. The next major section we move into is where people begin to get stumped and often ask us more and more questions as they get into more of a research mode. And this is dealing with the national industry perspective. One reason this is important is because no matter where you begin to launch the business, most small businesses begin with the notion or with an idea that that they don't want to be small forever, that there's an opportunity in the marketplace. It may be specific to one city or one regional market, or it may not be. It may be purely an online market, an online business activity which has a seemingly global marketplace, or it might be very much place specific. But in either case, think as an investor would. Before an investor makes a substantial purchase of one company's stock, they want to know what is going on in that industry, not just how is that company doing right now. That company may be the market leader in a shrinking industry. In the same way, before a bank or lender or another investor, and think of yourself as an active investor in the business as well, makes a substantial commitment or investment or loan or risk obligation to you, the business, have you thought about where the big picture is headed? Where is your industry on a national or global scale headed? Is it growing? Is it very early stage and emerging? Is it a very mature industry? Or is it aging and declining? And there are a number of places to get information about where your industry is on a national scale, and even at national or global markets. Some of these include trade associations. A lot of information will be provided in more detail later regarding research databases, articles, and publications relating to your industry, and other resources we can provide. From the national perspective, also look at who are the customers of other businesses like yourself. How do you fit into the big picture? There may be trends and changes that are going on and within your industry and other markets that just haven't been reflected locally yet. It may be that those trends are moving this way, and they will also affect you in just a matter of months, or will affect your industry between now and the time your business actually opens. So look at the national level. As you begin to think about who your customers will be, how does your customer base compare to that of your peers in other markets in aggregate at the national level? Who are the customers? How large is the market? Is it growing or shrinking? What's happening with your competition? Are new firms just like yourself coming onto the scene every day, every week, every month? Or are there firms leaving the marketplace? Here we provide just a few basic resources that you can begin to reach out to capture information about state level or larger or national demographic information about the consumer marketplaces especially, as well as other business resources. And this is just one of the first of several areas where we'll provide a few resources like this. A quick case study to show the insight that you can gain from studying national industry data. In this example, a gymnastics instructor consulted with one of our centers in South Carolina, who helped her to identify 5 or 6 key criteria of the gymnastics instruction customer base nationwide. They found from trade associations and from publications that were available within the gymnastics industry that at the national level, roughly 1% of U.S. households participate in some type of gymnastic instruction. On average, those households had a key income threshold, in this case $45,000. Typically within those households, there were 2 school-aged children. 80% of the participants on the national level were female, 95% were white. That can be very powerful information when you begin to look at knowing what the customer base, the target market, the effective buying consumer base for that product or service is nationally. How is it reflected in your local area? The next step to the planning process is to look at the local market. In the context of what you learned at the regional or national level, what do you see locally within your community, within your trade area, or within the industry that you wish to serve? Are the trends similar? It may be that an industry is shrinking nationally but growing within the state. And we see that in several areas in South Carolina presently. Manufacturing is making something of a comeback. The recent growth of the tire industry, for example. These trends that we see locally, we can clearly document are not consistent with the rest of the nation. And that doesn't mean that you need to ignore national data. But when you can defend and document what is happening locally, especially when it's positive, it's important to do so. It may be the industry is more mature or less mature at the local level than is nationally as well. Within your local market, do you have the technology resources required? Do you have the infrastructure, the computing resources, the access to data? Is the regulatory environment much different locally than nationally? And are there specific financial considerations that are relevant in the state or region that may differ from the national marketplace? To take a look back at the gymnastics example we looked at a few minutes ago, when you apply the national level key consumer household data for gymnastics instruction to the local market within South Carolina where the client was looking at opening a new facility, by applying those thresholds of an average household income, $45,000, 2 school-age children, the age and race and ethnicity issues, the client identified roughly 5,000 qualifying households that are similar to the target market from the national level within her local target market. However, within that same market area, that same 7 miles, they also clearly identified 3 established competitors. So if you assume that each of those 3 existing competitors plus the 1 new business, we're going to split that market evenly, that 5,000 qualified households. That will leave a maximum potential of 1,250 for the new business. But realistically, we know that's not reasonable because as a startup business, the world doesn't know you're there. And in many cases, even if you're there for a few years, the world may still not know you're there. So the consultant decided to scale back that potential market to say you only can reach 10% of your potential 1,250 clients within the first year. What does that lead you to? In this case, just doing the math, they realized that they stand a fair chance of realizing 125 potential customers within a 6 to 12 month timeline. Their business plan, their financial analysis realized that there was a break-even of roughly 40 customers to make the facility cash flow positive and truly viable in the marketplace. So by just looking at the national data, what the research shows about your potential customers, applying that to the local information where your customers really are, they were able to identify that we only need 40 based on our financials, and there are 125 using a safe reach 10% penetration. Pretty good odds that, yes, this marketplace can support an additional facility like mine. So we provide that case study just to show quickly how the market information available from the national level integrated with and applied to your local level can make a plan much more convincing. But the key here is to really know the numbers, to know what you're looking at, and not to write a plan based on speculation and this is what I think I see, and well, it seems like about 1 out of 4 cars on the street that pass a window are white, about 1 out of 4 are gray or tan. Well, it's all a matter of when it's documented, it's much more effective and compelling. When it's speculative and it's very subjective, it's not nearly as convincing. Okay, moving on now to, I referred to the SWOT analysis tool, and SWOT is a strategic planning acronym, as you could probably find it here on the screen. Just an acronym standing for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT. And this comes from planning processes, from strategic planning, community planning, sometimes called an environmental scan, looking at the marketplace, looking at the external factors, would be the lower row in the chart. Positive factors in the marketplace around you, you perceive as opportunities. Negative factors in the marketplace around you, you perceive as threats. Internally, when you look at you, the business in the marketplace, your characteristics, your firm, positive characteristics are viewed as strengths. Negative characteristics are viewed as weaknesses. So you have the internal, the external, the positive, and the negative. In a simple box arrangement like this leads us to what we call a SWOT analysis. And let me offer it. While it looks nice in the box, typically it's going to be translated into paragraphs or into bullet points, not in just a text box within the plan. And these are just a few examples of a typical client's findings as they go through the SWOT analysis. What are my internal strengths? What do I bring to the marketplace? What are my weaknesses? What are the gaps in my plan? What are the gaps in my funding plan? How does my facility compare to other facilities? The external opportunities we see, that the social and demographic, perhaps it's a growing marketplace. Target market type families are moving to the area. There may be technological opportunities within the region the business is located. And the threats, the external weaknesses, there could be political, regulatory change on the horizon. There could be negatively impacting social demographic change elements, or there could be national economic trends or changes that are coming that the business may be affected negatively by. Okay, so we've looked at the national market, the local market, how you, the target business, fits into that, the subject business fits into that. The next key criteria to look at in a great deal of detail is the target market. Simply put, this is the who is going to buy the good or service you sell. The best laid plans, the most brilliantly designed cakes, the most effective, insightful consulting programs that can truly impact a business may be wonderful, but until you can communicate not just what you do or why you do it, but who you do it for, who is out there calling for what you offer, does the market scream for an answer that looks like yours? And to address this, you, the business owner, need to craft a clear knowledge of who the target market is, what age, what income bracket, what industry categories, what size employers or businesses will buy what you sell. Certainly there, and the sizes of the market, the number of firms that are potential customers of yours, is not a static number. Those numbers change. Is the market getting larger, getting smaller? If you're selling to consumers directly, if it's a B2C business model, know where to find demographic information. Not only just strictly the facts and figures, the number of people of a certain age or income bracket, but how do psychographic elements and lifestyle choices fit into that market analysis? It may be that on the surface, the number of households is positive, the incomes may be positive, but it may be that for one reason or another, the local market is of a different lifestyle choice, of a different effective age or psychographic pattern, such that it really isn't nearly as positive for your business as you suspect it is. Look for existing purchase patterns within the industry, within your target market. Understand what they do now and why. Understand what the barriers to entry may be, because they affect not only you, but other businesses, other potential competitors who come after you. And begin to think and communicate what kind of growth strategy you plan to implement as you effectively move through this target market, as you circulate within the market, within the industry, as you grow and acquire new customers. What kind of growth opportunities do you anticipate? What kind of strategy will you implement to get beyond that first year, that first and second year, those first 3 years to 5 to 10 to 15 years? In the context of a competitive marketplace, competitive positioning is clearly illustrated by the chart before you. In a busy marketplace, in a crowded marketplace with lots of businesses that look similar, you really can't count on the consumer or your customer to call you just because you're there. You have to be more than just there. You have to be there, and you have to be different. You have to be better, and not just a little bit better. Most customers won't, in a business relationship, cut off a supplier or vendor they've worked with for several years because they can save a fraction of a percent on cost, or because they have a few more options. You have to be not only just a little better than your competition, but you have to be dramatically better. And understand, think of yourself and look at yourself as the customers will look at you in the context of the competition. And keep in mind, there's always competition. Some research out of Harvard, it very simply identifies the 4 primary areas of competitive differentiation in the context of, are you differentiated based on product, based on your customer, based on the people you employ, or your cost? And without going into a lot of detail here and how each of these interact, I'd just like to quickly point out that it's important that you pick one of these where you are dramatically different, where you can clearly differentiate yourself from your competition in at least one of these areas. And hopefully there are 2 or 3 others where you can say, and we also compare very well here, or we're probably a little better here as well. But it's important to remember that you really can't be, and you can't convince your customers, and you probably won't convince lenders or investors either, that you are the best at everything. You are not only the smartest, you're also the quickest, the cheapest, the most reliable. As you begin to see these areas of customers' expectations and how customers view the marketplace often conflict, and you not only do you not want to be the best at everything, you truly can't be the best at everything. So again, they're just in the context of your research, what you know about yourself, what you know about your customer base, what you know about your competitors, begin to craft and to proactively plan how you want to be viewed by your customers, by the marketplace, and position yourself that way from the beginning. The marketing and sales plan is the next major component of the business plan. And I've heard it said that there was a time when the business plan may not have been as critically necessary in a different lending environment in days gone by that may never come back again. There were banks, there were lenders, there were investors who had funds who would say, tell me your idea, we may look at, we may want to invest in it, without ever seeing a well-articulated, meaningful, detailed business plan. Certainly that wasn't the case for everyone, but it did happen. Even so, even if it was possible to get a business launched and funded without a written business plan of substance, the odds of keeping a business open and operating without a marketing plan, without a sales plan, were certainly stacked against you. So while the business plan may have been what someone wrote, the exercise you went through just to get bank funding, just to get the business open, the marketing plan is what you look at over and over again. It's where you set targets, where you compare yourself to your targets, where you evaluate what's working, what's not. And while the business plan may get you open, the marketing plan keeps your business open. The marketing plan at a high level basically answers questions about, what is our message? How do we get our message to our target audience? We need to look at the detail in marketing plans and expenses. A marketing plan without a budget is a wish list, and wishing doesn't always make the phone ring. So you keep in mind that marketing from a high level is inclusive of branding, paid advertising, promotional items, public relations, your communication strategy. So a lot of elements go into the umbrella of marketing. And some of these are expensive. Some of these have a very small price point. But ultimately, they all need to be considered throughout the course of a calendar year, throughout the course of a business cycle, to remind you that you can't just buy an ad once and stay in business forever. That clearly is a mistaken notion. And the marketing plan needs to be living and vibrant and changing and updated from time to time as well. This slide overviews a long-term strategic marketing plan, and this is really over a 3 to 5 year horizon. Some of these elements are very critical up front. Knowing your marketplace, knowing your customer, your target customer, maybe there are 2 different target segments. If you're spreading beyond more than 3 target audiences, you're probably going too thin, too wide. Find that niche market where you really are competitive, where you can create some name recognition and build repeat customers. And then over time, the other elements become important as well as you begin to repeat the sales cycle, repeat the transactions that build a business with repeat customers. All these elements may not be addressed in the very front end, but over the course of operating the business, they do all have their place. A marketing plan should be reflective of a long-term, high-level marketing strategy. Some businesses create a unique position in the marketplace that is very much wrapped around their marketing strategy. not only that it may not be that the products are much different than others. It may be strictly that their marketing messages are different, or their retail experience is different. Their merchandising strategies may be different. They may choose to invest in a radically different advertising strategy, or they may manipulate pricing at different periods throughout the year, throughout the business cycle, as part of their marketing strategy. And without going into a long explanation, business owners learn pretty quickly, if they don't know before they begin the business, that marketing is one area, one academic discipline, if you will, and sales is another. In some ways they overlap, and sometimes the same people serve both functions as marketing and salespeople. But from a strategy perspective, sales is a little different, and sales requires a different set of metrics, a different set of goals, and a different way of planning, projecting, evaluating, compensating, realigning, and moving forward. At this point, we begin to get very practical in the business plan and touch on the operating plan. The operating plan, for many people, beginning the research process, beginning the planning process, will find that of all the elements of the business plan, the operating plan comes the most naturally, it's the easiest to write. And it basically is based around being very specific about your physical location, what happens there and why, what kind of equipment, facilities do you have, what kind of employment levels do you need, how many people in the building at any point in time, what are the business hours, are you closed for lunch, do you open on Saturdays, do you provide 24-hour customer service support by phone or online, what kind of inventory do you need, what kind of equipment is there to machine the inventory, to refine from working inventory to finished goods. And just it's the nuts and bolts of the business. And for many entrepreneurs who come out of an industry where they've worked in the field, they've had their hands in the product, this is the part they know the most about. And this is often the easiest to document and to capture as part of the business plan. A good operating plan may also include current employment numbers, projected employment numbers, as well as general job descriptions, and which become the basic elements of an employee handbook at some point in time. Slightly different from the operating plan, we begin to think about the management team. It's a very important question for every potential investor, whether it's venture capitalist, angel investor, friends and family investor, or if it's a commercial lender, is the who. Who is the management team? Who are the owners? Who are the other key agents involved in making the business happen? Who are they? What are their backgrounds? What are their qualifications? Do you have enough knowledge about not only the product or service, but also about the customer, also about business ownership, also about basic accounting and finance issues to be effective in operating the business on a long-term basis? It may be that the business owner is the only manager or maybe the only employee for a long time, but the business plan needs to clearly specify who makes decisions. Are all owners part managers, or all managers owners? Ultimately, who is responsible for each activity within the business? Who has the final say-so in making the business happen? And at the end of the day, whose name is on the line? Part of the management plan may also look a little broader than just the immediate owners to a board of directors if it's a larger corporation, an organizational chart, and for many small businesses, that organizational chart is one circle with lots of lines going out of it. It may be just you, and you may do everything for a little while, but understand at what point in the future does it begin to look different. If there are employees, or if there are long-term relationships with customers and vendors and others, this is your opportunity to begin to create that corporate culture, the values, the guiding principles that motivate you to create the business, to step out, to risk personal investment, to risk your future in some way. It should be reflected by how you conduct the business. And again, how you want partners within the community, within the business community, to view you. You can also address culture, engagement of employees, and how you plan to evaluate performance of employees and others. At this point, it's time to go back, take a look at the information you compiled, section by section, distill out the one or two key ideas from each element of the business plan, and craft the executive summary from that. And then place that summary at the beginning of the plan so that it gives a page to two at the most overview of what happens within the business, how it should work, how it should feel, how it should look. Obviously, the goal of the executive summary is to pique someone's interest without providing all the details, to communicate credibility, competence, and to communicate clearly who your customers are. With that, I'll provide just a few general summary remarks. Today, having a business plan truly is essential. Only the smallest, most careless of businesses would begin without some type of fundamental plan in writing. But more important than just being required by every business partner you're going to face, a business plan truly is useful. It really is meant to be a tool of management, a tool of ownership to create your vision, to align all the resources together to move forward in a positive direction. The nature of the plan, the level of detail, the way it's written, sections that are included or excluded can vary based on the purpose that you use the audience. If you're writing it for a lender, it may have a different twist, different focus on financial information, return on investment, ability to service debt, than it would have if you're writing it more as a summary of management strategy and objective and who the customers are in detail. You've heard the saying, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. I believe if it's worth doing, if this business venture is worth moving forward with and proceeding with, then it's worth taking the time to get the business plan in writing, because the first thing you're going to be asked for every time you tell someone, hey, I've got this new business idea, is going to be, have you got a plan? Have you got it written down? Can I take a look at it? In crafting a meaningful business plan, research is your goal. A reference librarian may well be your friend. Many of the numbers that you're looking for, some of the information in the background about your potential customers or your competitors is available. The research has been done before by some government entity. It may be the Census Bureau, maybe Bureau of Economic Analysis. There are a number of different organizations that collect data. It may be an industry trade group. It may be an association. It may be a state government entity. The numbers are probably out there somewhere. Your job is to go find them, find advocates in the field, others who will help you. In many cases, a business owner of a similar type business in a different marketplace that wouldn't be viewed as a competitor or a threat to you may be very willing to provide general information about their business plan, their experiences in preparing a plan, the questions they ask, the things they learn in their early days as well. So we encourage you to find advocates to help with research. Your public libraries are a great place to start there. Find advocates in the field who can help you. And remember that the Small Business Development Centers are here to help as well through one-on-one consulting, through shared information, through databases, and other business resources we have as well. So don't hesitate to reach out and find a local Small Business Development Center near you. And you can begin that with a search from our website at www.scsbdc.com.
Okay, Scott. Well, that was a lot of information, and consequently we have several questions. So let's get started. Question number one, this seems like a lot of work. There's a lot to this. Can I hire somebody to do this for me?
You certainly can. That is an option. I would ask, why would you want to? And again, just to answer a little satirically, yes, you can. I've had clients who have come to our office and said, I paid someone, and I've heard numbers from a few $100s to $15,000 to $20,000 to prepare business plans for us in the past. And ultimately, the person who needs to learn from the plan, the person who needs to be doing the research himself, doesn't learn nearly as much. The example from school is you can have someone else may do your homework for you, but if they're not going to take the final exam, you really need to do your own homework. So the secret is that what you learn through the process is just as important as the business plan product itself. And the reality is that you can save money by doing it yourself. There may be pieces of it. There may be that you need to pay someone in a consulting role to obtain some critical data that isn't available publicly, but that's just a piece of it. Ultimately, the business owner is the one responsible for the success of the business, and they stand to gain the most from writing their own plan.
Okay, well, that makes sense. But isn't a business plan primarily for a bank? So if I don't really plan on going to a bank for financing, if I'm going to self-finance, can I just skip this step?
Again, the answer is sure you could, but why would you want to? In many cases, business partners other than just a bank, a lender, or investor will require a business plan. In many cases, even in our local marketplace, a commercial real estate manager, in most cases, in desirable locations, very often will ask for a copy of a business plan because they want to know that the prospective tenant has thought through has done their research, they've thought through the business, they've addressed a lot of questions, because ultimately that commercial landlord, that property manager, doesn't want to have a sign a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease with a tenant who's going to be out of business in 6 months. And that just echoes to me that those vendors in the marketplace, that industry accepts the notion that a strong business plan does dramatically increase your odds of success long term. Often there may be vendors or major suppliers of your business who will also ask to see a business plan in addition to not just the lender.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, so now I know I'm going to have to do it. I see a lot of books and software and online sites where I can get information or buy software to create a business plan. Is there one best way that it should look or be structured, or one better piece of software to use or anything like that?
There really isn't any one magic formula, any one best structure or format. Again, it should reflect who the consumer is. Are you preparing a business plan to discuss with employees in an annual retreat or planning session? Are you preparing business plan updates or crafting a plan to take to a group of venture capital angel investors? You really must consider the audience and be responsive to the expectations that they will have and what they need. So there really isn't a magic format. In terms of software and tools, there are a number of great books, some very good writers, many that are friends and supporters of the small business development centers nationwide that provide some great resources at a reasonable price. As for software, there are a number of tools and templates that can take some of the formatting burden off of you, the business owner, or the business plan writer. But again, I believe that you can go fairly low-tech here without committing to a substantial investment. Microsoft Word and Excel make a pretty good combination. They're just very effective tools, and I see a lot of business plans from clients who are prepared through software packages. Ultimately, the software formats the database that pulls together the text you write, and the financial projections don't always communicate, and they don't always validate every assumption with the business owner, with the user as they go through the process. So I hear often that someone has a great experience writing the plan, they ask a lot of great questions, they build a narrative that makes sense, but then they see the financial projections, they see the numbers they've come up with through use of the software, and it just doesn't make sense, and they're confused and frustrated. So we have to kind of back up a little bit. We can take the text, capture that, copy and paste that into Word, and build numbers that you understand yourself, that you can manipulate, that you can own and change in Excel or a similar format. And we can provide a lot of these tools, templates, and samples through our organization at no charge as well. Okay.
In fact, I think that everybody viewing this webinar will receive an outline, a template outline tool at the end of the event.
Yes, that will be provided following the event. And again, it's intended to be a general model to follow to provide some structure so that you have a sense of the flow section by section. And within that, you've got the freedom to expand one or another to focus on what's relevant to you, but we don't want you to feel tied to or constrained by that structure.
Great. I brought up a slide from the presentation here on national research in order to pose the next question, which is, if I'm opening a business in Spartanburg and I don't have a national sales plan, why do I have to research these national trends?
In many cases, you've got to consider the audience of the business plan again. If you're preparing a plan to seek funding through a commercial loan, through a bank or the lender, part of their due diligence, part of the burden on them is to validate your assumptions, to validate your plan. And if your plan is created in a vacuum that says nothing that happens beyond the borders of my local market will really affect me, we know that this isn't real. That isn't right. Reality doesn't work that way. The marketplace is very open and very flat, particularly within competition and industry trends can move very quickly from state to state, from coast to coast, or even from country to country to affect us sooner rather than later. So I think you run the risk of losing credibility, of looking as if you were short-sighted or even worse, lazy, in not taking the time to quickly document, this is what I know about my marketplace. My industry is stable and strong and growing, or there are elements of my industry that are contracting, and there are real threats out there. However, here's how I build my plan to proactively work against that, or to identify targets and specific industry segments that are isolated from those negative changes. It really gives you an opportunity to show that you are credible and knowledgeable about the marketplace, and not just doing the least possible to tell your story.
Okay, that's helpful. Moving over to the SWOT analysis that you talked about before, how do I know if my SWOT analysis was valid and I wasn't just looking at the positive side of my story?
That's a good question, and there is an element of rose-colored glasses. I've told a number of people, jokingly, of course, that it's important to get feedback from a number of sources. Don't write a business plan and tell your mom it's a good idea and expect your mother to be very critical. I joke and say, here's a news flash. Your mother's going to lie. Your mother's going to say it's a great idea. You're the smartest ever, when that clearly might not be the case. I know that's the case with me. So find other people you can trust within the industry, within the marketplace. A consultant through a small business development center, for example, has the freedom to be objective, supportive and positive, but also to challenge some assumptions, to say, is that really the case? All your competitors are underfunded or undersized, and you have the answer to that. The answer may be yes, but again, the challenge is to document it and to try to poke holes in the plan early on, so that you can learn from it, can shore up weak areas, and to capture as much reality as possible, because you're only in a vacuum when you're planning. The more you look outside, the more you communicate with the marketplace, the more research you do, the more questions you ask, the stronger the plan becomes, and the more credible you become in the marketplace as well.
Okay, good. Moving over to, what are we talking about now? Strategic marketing plan. This looks very intense. Lots of steps, lots of elements involved. Is it really necessary, and does it really have to be this in-depth?
Necessary, yes. It may not always lay itself out in 10 specific steps in your market and your approach. There may be some of these areas that have a little bit of overlap, but these 10 steps should be addressed in some way. In many cases, clients who work with me combine their marketplace and their customer in one, and they may not all fall into place very early in the process. However, it's impossible to proceed much farther beyond a basic plan without, for example, looking at step number 9, creating a marketing budget, having some idea of what's it actually going to take I know there are a number of things we need to do to reach X number of customers. We have to communicate our message. We have to communicate to reach them through maybe social media, maybe online, maybe paid advertisement, maybe broadcast media. There are many, many ways to reach customers. However, each of them has some associated cost in dollars or time. So it is key to not overlook the budget process. And even the last step, developing a system of accountability, that means that you, the business owner, ultimately are responsible for evaluating what's working, what's not. Are we getting a response from our efforts, our activities, the dollars we invest in reaching new customers? Do they align, and do they return the inquiries we need, the sales we need to get from those activities? So at some level, and each step may not be perfected in the first run through, but a thorough plan needs to give some thought to each of these so that you can, again, communicate them to potential customers, communicate to potential vendors or suppliers, and as well as communicate to potential investors or lenders who will support the business financially.
Well, that's a great segue into this next question, which is you mentioned a second ago about marketing methods. How am I supposed to figure out what the best marketing methods are for my business? Whether or not I should place an ad in a publication or on radio or is social media enough? How do I go about determining what's right for me?
That really is, there's a short answer which is very short, and a long answer. The short answer is it's about the customer. It's about the target market, understanding where they go for information. Depending on the type of business and who your customers are, in most cases, the goal of a new business is not to become a household name immediately recognized by everyone. You can do that if you had an unlimited budget and a lot of time. However, a more reasonable goal would be to be recognized and familiar to your target audience. If your target audience is dental practices, then you want to spend your dollars, spend your time, put your message in front of dentists and those who operate dental practices. Not electricians, not plumbers, not attorneys or accountants, but dentists. So again, the most effective marketing strategy, the most effective mediums to use, the most effective ways to get your message in front of your audience are always what will reach your audience. Don't spend money or time trying to reach people who aren't your audience or who don't directly influence your audience. But it really comes down to know your customer. Ask your target customer, what do you read? Where do you get information? Where do you read? Do you get a daily newspaper? Do you receive online news or email? Do you receive trade information from what publications? The more you know about where your target audience learns, gets information, who they trust, the better you can communicate your message in a format they recognize.
Okay, well, that was fantastic. Tons of information there, very helpful. In the interest of time, we're going to wrap up the Q&A right now. We're going to bring Scott back in a minute for some closing thoughts. But before we do that, I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to Portfolio. We are a communication company based in Greenville, South Carolina. We provide communication services, planning, and logistical support for web seminars like this one around the U.S. We offer a full slate of communication services ranging from writing, editing and design, social media support, and media relations. You can find out more about us at www.portfoliofc.com. Now we're going to bring Scott back.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. And I will just in general provide a quick overview on a very positive note that your questions pointed out that you're right. It is a lot of work, and it probably won't be very easy at every step of the way. However, you don't have to do it all on your own. There are a number of resources available. Again, we mentioned the template outline that will be provided following the webinar. their SBDC offices. There are some other resources we can provide online as well. And the questions you ask, the lessons you learn through the planning process ultimately do go to make you more efficient at communicating your message to your target audience and becoming more credible, more knowledgeable about your customer base, your product, your service, and a better business owner. We see it over and over again. So while it may take some time, it may cost a little bit of money here and there. The planning process shouldn't bankrupt you. However, creating a solid plan that makes sense, that truly makes you viable in the marketplace, can be worth thousands of dollars as you begin to open, run, operate, and grow your business. And with that, a key part of the business plan, which we really didn't touch on today, is the financial plan. And just like the business plan comes before the business opening, the financial plan always comes before the funding. And we'll talk more about the financial plan, some basic concepts of commercial lending, some licensing issues as well, in the final session of this webinar, also available online. And with that, thank you for your time, and look forward to more questions from you. Again, we want to direct you to the website, www.scsbdc.com, and from there you can find an SBDC office near you. Thank you.